Jared Kushner this week lost his top-level security clearance. And so since Mueller does not really speak about his investigation much, and we don't know the details of that investigation, there has been an investigation by reporters into some of the business dealings that Kushner has had that could have potentially compromised him when it comes to his job as a member of Trump's administration. Now, this has nothing to do with Russia, so everybody calm down. It has more to do with banks in the United States, meetings that he had with these banks while he was in the White House, and the gigantic loans that his family's business, real estate business, got immediately after those meetings. So let me give you the details on that. So there's Apollo, which is a private equity firm. In November, Apollo lent $184 million to Mr. Kushner's family real estate firm, Kushner Companies. The loan was to refinance the mortgage on a Chicago skyscraper. Keep in mind that that amount was a little unusual from Apollo. It was triple the size of the average property loan made by Apollo's real estate lending arm, Securities Filing Show. So there's Apollo, that's a pretty large amount of money, but then you move on to Citigroup. An even larger loan came from Citigroup, which lent the firm and one of its partners $325 million to help finance a group of office buildings in Brooklyn. Again, when we reference firm here, it's Jared Kushner's family's real estate company. The loan was made in the spring of 2017, shortly after Mr. Kushner met in the White House with Citigroup's chief executive, Michael Corbat. The two men talked about financial and trade policy and did not discuss Mr. Kushner's family business, one person said. So there are multiple sources that are speaking to the New York Times about these meetings, and that is what they claimed. But some of you might wonder, okay, well, what would a private equity firm like Apollo possibly want? What would Citibank or Citigroup possibly want? Well, Apollo has sought ways to benefit from the White House's possible infrastructure plan, and its executives had tens of millions of dollars personally at stake in the tax overhaul that was making its way through Washington last year. When it comes to Citigroup, one of the country's largest banks, it's right now heavily regulated by federal agencies, and like other financial companies, it's trying to get the government to relax its oversight of the industry.
All right, so 3 points here. Number one, this is why you avoid conflict of interest, because now we'll never know. Do we know for sure that Citigroup met with Kushner and they gave him a giant loan to his family because they wanted tax breaks or other regulatory issues, like, by the way, destroying Dodd-Frank, which the Trump administration is in the middle of doing? Well, a lot of people would rightfully say, of course, yeah, that they want those things, and then the people in power, they grease by giving them this giant loan. But even if that's not the case, you've obviously created an appearance of a conflict of interest and an appearance of corruption. Well, the conflict of interest is definite, but it is an appearance of corruption. So that's why we don't want conflict of interest issues. That's why you shouldn't meet with people who you're gonna pass laws about while they're giving your family hundreds of millions of dollars. So now that's point one. Point two is Apollo, now they got something really important in return, which I'll get to as point three. But I didn't know this, they gave the money through their real estate fund, okay? And their real estate fund apparently is, their largest investor is the government of Qatar. That's interesting. That's interesting on a couple of fronts. First of all, as a foreign government, I hear that foreign governments getting involved in our politics is really, really bad, okay? But somehow it's Qatar and whatever, okay? All right, so, but then the second point is, one that this article from the New York Times did not connect, and I don't know if they're connected, but let me just note that Kushner was looking for $500 million for one of his properties in New York, the biggest one, 666 Fifth Avenue. He first tried to sell it to the Chinese, a company called Anbang, which is owned by the Chinese government. While he was in the transition period, he's gonna go and serve the president soon, dealing with the Chinese government, and they were gonna way overpay. And it was so controversial that the Chinese government was like, okay, forget it, and they backed out, right? This is just too ugly.
That's pretty brazen, by the way, in the process of the transition.
That was unreal, that was record-breaking corruption. And Kushner's not the one who backed out, the Chinese backed out. They're like, look, this looks bad even for us, okay? then Kushner then went to the government of Qatar and asked for $500 million. And again, Qatar backed out because they're like, no, everybody's paying attention. This doesn't look good, okay? Then, look at this. Through 2 different properties, Kushner Companies gets $500 million. Part of it is from Citibank. The other part is from, in a roundabout way, the government of Qatar. Now, it really might be for those 2 different properties and not for Fifth Avenue, which is in a lot of trouble. That's their biggest building and in a world of hurt, right? It might bankrupt the whole company if it goes under, right?
Damn.
So, but it does happen to be $500 million in both cases, and it is funneled, at least part of it, through the government of Qatar, at least, and the conduit is Apollo. And he had many meetings with this guy from Apollo. It wasn't just one meeting. And they say, well, I know he's the founder, but he didn't work on that particular loan. Oh, come on. That's totally ridiculous.
He's still involved in this family's business. And it's the same situation with Trump where he's like, yeah, blind trust. I don't even know if he actually did the blind trust. He claimed he would do it and it doesn't appear that there was
no blind trust. Trump handed it off to his kids. That's not a blind trust. Blind trust is you hand it off to a lawyer and you don't know where your money is, and hence there's no conflict of interest. Trump knows exactly where his money is. Mar-a-Lago, all of his properties run by his kids, who he talks to all the time. In the case of Kushner, he says, well, I divested from the company, but actually some of these buildings he still has money in.
Yes.
So the conflict of interest is 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, and the final part of it is back to Apollo. So Apollo could funnel the money to the Kushners and maybe they make a profit. It's possible, we don't know. That part's not clear. So that would give them one incentive. The other incentive is to help the guys in power. And what would Apollo want in return? Well, Trump during the campaign had said that he was going to take away a loophole that allowed private equity companies and their owners to pay half the taxes they normally would. Well, guess what happened? They didn't take away the loophole.
Right.
So private equity guys, like the ones that run Apollo, got to keep their loophole and cut their taxes in half. Well, that gives you a lot of incentive to give a loan, even if you're not going to get the best rates or the best deal out of it. So mission accomplished.